Let's go. So if you're a big MYLES Brennan fan, this film study is just for you. We're also going to break down what Mike Denbrock is doing offensively. It is starting to get very exotic. You're starting to see more install. And as always, our spring practice breakdowns are presented by the Presley Collection and PresleyCollection.com. So we're going to spend a lot of time on the deep touchdown to Jaray Jenkins towards the end of this video, but I want to show you this. MYLES Brennan here, this is just such a great design on this throw to Brian Thomas Jr. over the middle. So let's break it down. And what you see here off this snap is, first off, the formation. So we are in 12 personnel. Even though it doesn't look like 12 personnel, you see that Nick Storrs, who we talked about a lot in our film study yesterday, and Jack Mashburn are on the field. So we are in a two tight end formation, but this time they are split out wide. So the defense, you don't hear it because I had the sound off. The coaches on the sideline are yelling, "Screen, screen," as in this is going to be a screen to Malik Nabers. Now, why would the defense also think it's a screen? Well, they just ran one with Garrett Nussmeier to Brian Thomas Jr. just a few plays prior. So Mike Denbrock is throwing a lot of different eye candy. And yes, it does look like a screen to Malik Nabers. And you see the defense is playing a screen. You see, obviously, Greg Brooks fighting off this block right here by the tight end. You also see some linebackers widening out here. So what does that do? Well, we're actually not going to run a screen. We're going to run a slant over the middle, and that is exactly what happens. This is really good offense working to the backside. Just excellent stuff. The only issue, and also from our film study yesterday, you saw that play Walker Howard did, that middle screen to the running back. There was an illegal man downfield penalty, and this would actually be the same thing. So 31, 2, 3, 4. So, yes, Charles Turner's illegal man downfield. Boom, I'm looking at you right now. Yes, it's an early boom. I got to make sure you're awake because I'm going to need your help breaking down this deep touchdown to Jaray Jenkins. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the Tiger detail shot, and right after that, at full speed, we are going to play a different angle from the Colada show. So what I want you to do right now, like we did with our Jayden Daniels counter film study, is give me your MVP on this play. Whether you're watching this on a premiere or just 10 years from now, type Q for QB, type W for the wide receiver group, or type O for the offensive line and the pass protection. Now remember, plays do not exist in a vacuum. So the deep touchdown to Jaray Jenkins actually happened 2 plays after the screen that we just broke down. The first thing I want you to notice is the assistant coach right here signaling in to the defense that they are still in 12 personnel. You have a guy calling in the defensive calls right here. You have Matt House right here, Jamar Kane over here. I want you to take a look. This is Demario Tolan, a true freshman linebacker. Look how big this guy is. So Mike is obviously signaling in the play calls, and you see, once again, the defense knows they're in 12 because of the guy signaling in the play call. So this is the play right before the deep touchdown. And I want you to notice this. The guy that actually got beat on the deep touchdown is right here, Jordan Tolles. He wasn't even on the field for this play. So this is what Mike decides to do. They're doing a defensive substitution. So Mike says, look, let's see if we can hit him with a deep shot. We hit him over the middle with the slant. We just had a run for no gain. Let's take 2 tight ends out, bring in our best receiving tight end, which is right now Kole Taylor, and let's bring in our 3 starters at wide receiver, BTJ, Jaray Jenkins on the outside, and Malik Nabers right here. So you notice this is a different look than what LSU normally does, where they mostly run 11 and they don't flip personnel that often during the course of a series. This is different. We're flipping in a brand new set of personnel. We have 4 new wide receivers into the game, and we even subbed out the running back here, which is Trey Bradford. This is where things get really complicated. To really understand what happened, we would need an all-22 or a wider camera angle. So let's hit the dry erase board. Let's go. So unlike the Jayden Daniels counter film study, we are not actually going to draw this thing up in real time. I went on ahead and did all of that partially because I don't want another epic marker fail. If you want to see what I'm talking about, make sure you check out that Jayden film. So there's a bunch of very little things that happened on this play that made it very exotic, okay? So obviously the deep touchdown was to Jaray Jenkins on the post, and then you had Malik Nabers running a dig, and the innermost slot receiver was Brian Thomas Jr. He ran a wheel route, and there's something really fascinating about how he ran this route, which we will reveal in just a second. I actually reached out to some former coaches. Also, Kole Taylor, a tight end, was the tight end to create a quad formation. This is why I reach out to coaches who are way smarter than me. There's something very interesting about Kole Taylor on this play that I did not know to be true. So we'll show you in just a second. Now, the more interesting thing is trying to figure out what kind of coverage LSU was running. And I'm going to give it my absolute best guess here that this was cover 3. Okay? And once again, it's not drawn up all that well here. I have a smaller dry erase board. So obviously in this scenario, we did a rush 3, drop 8. We have a former corner in Jay Ward who now plays safety, and you have a former safety who now plays corner in Jordan Tolles, and this makes it even more confusing if you are a diehard LSU football fan. The free safety, I believe, was deep center. This was Joe Fuchsia, and then the other corner is a walk-on, what's his name, Ralph. He dropped into a deep third coverage here as well. And he actually didn't drop. He was already just sitting. So now that we've included all the prior context, let's take in a few other little extra observations. We have the student assistant here calling in the plays. And obviously we have Matt House and Jamar Cain right here. You have Cortez Hankton, the passing game coordinator right here. Mike Denbrock is somewhere in the back with BK. You have one of the corners who has no receivers or tight ends to his side of the football, already playing 10 yards off the ball. I would guess the center field safety here, Joe Fuchsia, is actually deeper than Ralph, the opposite corner. And I'm guessing Jordan Tolles is about similar distance away, because you could see we're not playing press coverage. Let me go ahead and just show you this right here. It is never a good sign when the defensive coordinator is already putting his hands up in the air like, what are we doing with our coverage? And the receivers coach is already celebrating a touchdown. Actually, both of them are already celebrating a touchdown here. For me, rush 3, drop 8 is a good type of defense to run against a Mississippi State, where they're a big intermediate passing game. And when you have all these guys, playing zone right here, it clogs up those intermediate lanes. Deep passing plays, though, it can cause coverage bust if you're 3 guys deep or whoever's deep isn't disciplined. What sucks for the defense here, though, is LSU calls the absolute perfect protection here. Max protection, okay? We have the tight end staying in the block. We have the running back here. So you cannot fault the lack of a pass rush here because it is 3 guys going up against 6 blockers, okay? Actually 7 blockers. So there's no way that the pass rush is going to get home. Now here at the end, Greg Brooks does come on a delayed rush because the running back did stay in. But you notice here, there is something very exotic about Kole Taylor. The first thing is Kole Taylor does a really good job in pass protection here, okay? One thing is he helps out here with Savion Jones. The one thing I like about Savion Jones is, yes, he's not fully refined yet. This guy just never gives up. He has one of the best motors on this team. So Kole Taylor does a good job squeezing down. He sees that no linebackers are coming under the late blitz, and he comes and helps out Cam Wire right here. There's something about Kole that makes this very interesting, okay? We do overload this side of the line of scrimmage with quads, right? 3 wide receivers, so trips to the right, and a 4th receiver in Kole Taylor, which does essentially make it quads. What makes it even more fascinating, though, is Kole Taylor on this play is not an eligible receiver, okay? So I did not know this. It took a coach I respect a lot that I reached out to about this play who notified me that Kole Taylor is not an eligible receiver. The end guys at the line of scrimmage are the only guys that are eligible to go out on a route. So technically, if Will Campbell went to the referee, once again, someone can correct me on this, and said, I'm an eligible receiver, Will Campbell could actually go out on a route. So this makes this very exotic for Mike Denbrock. It is rare for a defense to look at quads like this. This is a very odd formation, but the defense, there's no way you could process information that quickly to know that Kole Taylor is not going to go out on a route. So it's pretty clear that we have a perfect protection call. There's no way Mike could have known that they're running rush 3, drop 8. But what's really interesting about this rush 3, drop 8 is that you give all three of these really talented thoroughbred receivers super clean releases, okay? So when that happens, they're allowed to go full speed into whichever routes they're going to run. So I'll say it once and I'll say it again. I am not a coach. I don't know whose job was what. This might not have been cover 3. This could have been some weird man match, whatever. I don't know. But what actually happened here was all three of the wide receivers ran their routes to perfection, okay? So let's start with this frame. Joe, Big Play Fouché, has been one of the best players this spring, okay? What happens, let's just say Joe was the center field safety on this cover 3. Well, he bit on this dig route over the middle, okay? Now, why did he bite on this dig route? Well, number one, he could just be aggressive trying to jump around. But number two, Malik had been eaten all practice. He had been tearing up the defenses up to this point. So Malik draws the free safety from his center field role, okay? Now, look at that. There was a corner in a deep third waiting on him. So Joe had no business running with Malik on the dig. Also, something else about the dig right here, why Joe shouldn't have bid on this. This is a difficult throw anyway to fit over the linebacker's head. So it is more important to stop anything vertical. You have to know that on rush 3, drop 8, it's going to be hard to jump routes because you're not going to be able to get pressure. The quarterback has all day to allow deep routes to throw. So this is just a good rule, and we'll get to Jay Ward in just a second. It's harder to jump routes when you're only rushing 3 because the quarterback is unlikely to be under heavy pressure. The second thing here is Joe has to know that you have a walk-on playing one corner and a safety playing the other corner, okay? So with 3 guys to this side of the line of scrimmage, there is a good opportunity that there is probably going to be a deep post or some double move to the outside, especially considering there are no possible routes that could be run on this side of the line of scrimmage. So with BJ over here, another corner over here, it makes it less excusable to bite on the dig unless that is what he is coached to do, which I will reiterate once again with new defensive back coaches. That might be the case, but that is highly unlikely. The second thing we see is we then pick up here with Jordan Tolles, okay? So, once again, if this is indeed cover 3 and you do have the deep third, well, Joe actually should have picked up the post. So, yes, it is easy to blame Jordan Tolles, but if it was cover 3, this should have been Joe over the top of Jaray instead of Jordan Tolles. So I understand that a lot of people are piling on Jordan Tolles, saying that he needs to enter the transfer portal and whatnot. This was not entirely his fault. The wheel, okay? Now, this is a route concept that works a lot of the times. The reason why teams can't do it, though, is because it's a long developing route. There's no way Jay Ward knows that this is a wheel route or an out and up, whatever you want to call it. There's no way. So he's jumping this outside out route here because he thinks that that's what's happening, and that's his responsibility anyway. And also he thinks that he has Jordan Tolles over the top in this deep third. If Miles wanted to throw it, though, he could have had BTJ for a touchdown as well. Okay? So what probably should have happened is Malik get picked up by this corner, Joe picks up this post, and this is kind of tough. Jordan Tolles pick up this, but that's kind of tough. This then gets into, once again, football IQ. So Joe makes a bad decision to jump on Malik because Malik had just been eating up the secondary all day. Now we get to Jordan Tolles. Where have we seen him in the spot before? Oh, yes, in a drill that we did an entire video on. Jordan Tolles behind Jaray Jenkins, and almost to a T in the drill. Jaray on an underthrown ball creates a little extra separation by stopping and getting his body in front of Jordan Tolles, and this forces Jordan Tolles to trip over himself. Jaray did this exact thing in a drill, and if you want to see it, we'll link it down below. Legit, almost to a T. Now, if you're Jordan Tolles in this situation, I know this is going to sound like the same thing we said in the video. Number one, you're screwed, okay? If you're not going to turn your head, though, tackle him, okay? What a lot of DBs do that are beat, they don't even tackle him. They just put their hands in the air and just keep pushing this defender and make the referee call a pass interference penalty. But this is something Kerry Cooks and Robert Steeples needs to do with the defensive backs this year. And Elias Ricks did this versus South Carolina a few years ago. Sometimes a pass interference penalty is a really good thing, because tell me this, would you rather a surefire 100% touchdown or a 15-yard penalty? This is a 7-point penalty that could be prevented. Remember, Miles is throwing this from his own 30. A 15-yard penalty doesn't even put the offense in field goal range. Boom, I'm looking at you. Yes, you. Right now, okay? So, before I continue, we're going to show you the Myles Brennan 3 plays in the background. I know this film study is a little bit longer than our other ones, but I do feel the need to break that play down because that was some really impressive stuff from Mike Denbrock. And we'll get to Myles Brennan in just a second. The first thing, though, is I'm just going to say this, and this is just the case for all film studies and just football in general. Because it's such organized chaos and there's so much that goes into how you practice and how the plays are called and the design of the plays and the talent of the individual play caller himself, there is more that you don't know than you do know, right? So while this does sound very detailed, I don't know as much as these players and coaches do. So once again, this is my best educated guesses for what exactly happened on that deep touchdown play. Now, just to provide a little extra context here, there were some other deep touchdowns. Jayden Daniels hit Kyron Lacey for a 60-yard touchdown. I think Myles Brennan hit Jack Besh. And it is very important to keep this in mind. The defensive backs are being coached differently. They're practicing differently. No longer can they just bring guys to the ground in these scrimmage settings. So Brian Kelly stopped the practice to, reiterate a couple of these new coaching techniques about how they do things. So this is a little bit of a change, especially for the defensive side of the football, for how they practice in these scrimmage situations. To take it one step further, this is a very thin defensive backfield, and on the play that we spent most of the time on, those are 3 wide receivers that are all going to play in the league, right? At the very least 2 of them, Malik, BTJ, and Brian Thomas Jr., and we didn't even include the 2 best receivers on this team, which to me are Jack Besh and Kayshawn, and they're going up against, to me, the most unproven new secondary LSU has had in over a decade at the very least. It's kind of a scary thing right now. We are so used to having at least one bona fide first-round pick. Instead, it's a lot of transfers and guys playing new positions. So, yes, you don't have Darius Jones, Jarek Bernard-Converse. Obviously, Major Burns has been out all spring. Hopefully, the Seven Banks thing happens. So, a lot of backup defensive backs. Obviously, a walk-on out there as well in Jordan Tolles, who is not a corner. Look, that obviously helps out with the explosive passing plays, but The bottom line is this. A lot of you have your own opinions of Matt House, but this is the universal truth about defensive coordinators. And the number one thing you've got to make sure your defense is able to do is prevent explosive plays. That is something that has hamstrung LSU, and to me, it has been the number one thing that has held LSU back. Number one, their lack of hitting explosive plays. In other words, in particular last year, Max Johnson missing out on deep touchdowns, and on the other side of it, it's preventing explosive plays. Now, that was a bigger issue in 2020 than what it was in 2021, but the truth still remains the same. The explosive play defense and offense is what ultimately wins you championships. We saw it last year, really. LSU, one of their biggest wins of the season, Texas A&M, they had 3 explosive play touchdowns. In their loss to Alabama, Alabama capitalized on a deep touchdown of Jameson Williams, and Max Johnson missed Jaray on a deep right over the middle. You've got to be able to hit your explosive plays. You got to be able to defend it. And this is where we get to the Myles Brennan portion of the video. Comment below. Who do you think the MVP of this play was? The answer is most definitely not Myles Brennan. The defense made this pretty easy for Myles to read. He didn't have to really look any safety off. It was a pretty easy look. I think Mike, with the design of this play, thought that the out and up, or the wheel, was going to be what was actually going to be the open touchdown. But because Jaray just burned the defense so bad, Myles hit his good old buddy Jaray Jenkins. So, the thing is, this was actually a pretty simple throw for Myles, and in actuality, the ball was actually a little bit underthrown. And we've seen Myles underthrow Jaray, such as, the drill that we just showed you. He underthrew Jaray for a deep pass over the middle versus Mississippi State in 2020. Granted, Eric Gilbert blew a block on that play. And there was another deep throw that we briefly saw in an LSU video where Myles underthrew Jaray just a little bit. So that is very fascinating that Myles, maybe that's by design because, Jaray is so good at adjusting to the football and he's not necessarily a burner, so you don't want to overthrow him. But Myles is a cannon. Just throw that baby on out there. But still, the truth remains the same. Myles is the best deep ball thrower on this team. And I know that there is a battle between him and Jayden Daniels to be the starter. And I like Jayden Daniels a lot with what he can do with his legs. But the bottom line is if Myles continues to put deep passing touchdowns on tape, it is the number one deciding factor when it comes to football, explosive plays. And if Myles gives you a better chance of creating a vertical passing game, he's going to be your guy next year. And that's the case for any of these quarterbacks. I've seen Jayden get vertical as well, but we just see it a lot. Myles, even though it's not the absolute prettiest thing in the world, he's getting vertical, and you got to love that. You really do. So it is very interesting that Myles has been so good with the vertical passing game up to this point in the spring. So, of course, Coach Kelly is going to be all over this, and it's going to be interesting to see how this battle transpires over the next couple of weeks, and I cannot wait to see this spring game. Hope you enjoyed this video today. There's going to be some more videos floating in your face. I promise you the next ones won't be as long as this one, okay? Have a happy Easter. It is Power Hour LSU Bun. And tonight, some leftover Easter prime rib. Let's go. And you got to love this, man. Look, the offensive line coach showing love to Jaray. Chris Hilton got Kayshawn in the boot. You got to love. I love the teamwork. Hopefully this continues. So, yeah, let's go.